Samantha?
Yes.
I think we should just get started.
Okay.
I'm going to.
Sure. Okay. Hello. Thank you for joining us for the Purdue at Westgate's first webinar series. My name is Samantha Nelson, and I am the program manager for the Purdue Foundry here at Westgate. We know that most people are having to adapt to new changes that are occurring as we are. We have had thousands of people attend different events and programs here at the Westgate Academy over the last year. The events and programs have been resources for small businesses, startups, local and regional leaders, as well as community engagements. We don't want to stop this momentum as so many other organizations don't want to. So we are wanting to look at other platforms to continue this momentum and to continue hosting seminars just like this so we can help people grow, businesses grow in today's happenings. So having said that, we are super excited to host this webinar in regards to safe remote working. I would like to introduce you to some of the great representatives of the AME Group. The AME Group is an IT solutions company that specializes in several fields such as technology services, security and compliance, disaster recovery, physical security, staff training, and much more. They provide technology services to optimize revenue, reduce costs, and mitigate risk. Today, I would like to introduce you to Jennifer and Joe. I have had the pleasure of working with them throughout this webinar, and they are going to be truly great assets in helping you understand how to work safely and remotely in the field of cybersecurity. Also joining us from the AME Group today is Liz Robinson. She is the strategic advisor for the Evansville area. Liz will be moderating today's Q&A. With that, I will let her explain how to ask questions during this time of the presentation. Liz?
Thanks, Samantha, and thank you to Purdue Foundry at Westgate for inviting us today. I just want to thank everyone for participating and let you know that we want this event to remain interactive. So please type in your questions to the Q&A sidebar at any time during the presentation. To find this feature, all you need to do is hover your mouse over the presentation pane and you will see an icon that has two chat boxes with a little question mark. And if you hit that, then you're able to bring up the sidebar, ask your question, and I will interject as the presenter is presenting and try to get that question answered as quickly as possible. In the event that I cannot get to your question during the presentation, we will circle back around at the end and try to address anything that's still out there that you have questions on. And with that, I want to thank you and pass this along to Joe Donner.
Good morning, everyone. Appreciate you joining us. Hopefully we have some tips for you, some positive information. We will talk about some threats during these times of working from home related to people leveraging the COVID-19 to try to trick you. And we'll talk about some examples of failing at working from home and try to give you some best practices and tips. So with that, let's see. I don't see the screen. I don't see your screen, Jennifer. I don't see the slides.
Oh, hold on. I will get him.
Okay. Yeah, we have some slides that we're loosely going to try to follow here for you.
As we're waiting for those slides to come up, we already have our first question. So the question comes from Orion, and he wants to know, what security risks should we be aware of if we are not working through a VPN?
Well, we're going to talk about that, but your remote connectivity back to the office um, should be secured with two-factor authentication. There are a few ways to do it just using RDP, but RDP in itself on the port 3389 is somewhat insecure because a lot of people don't have strong passwords. And also that's a really common port that hackers will try to scan and see if it's something that's open to the internet, which a lot of people don't secure it properly, and that's the big risk. So two-factor authentication, and we're going to talk about that as far as one of the tips, is definitely recommended. So with that, we want to start with some positive things that you can do and give you some tips about how since you're working from home, how you can do that more securely. So I think the first tip we have for you is really you, right? The more aware you can be of the threats, the better you can be at stopping them. Really, the criminals have learned that the people are the easiest targets. There's a lot of technical controls that are in place, a lot of networks. And when you're at home, you may not have all those same controls securing your environment. So criminals know that as well. So they will try to trick you out of credentials, out of files, and really out of your access. So be really wary, and this is a good tip even when you're at work. When you get that email or you get that phone call, think before you provide information. As a trait in just being human, we really want to try to be helpful, and criminals know that. So, if you get some unusual requests on a phone call, you want to verify who that is on the other end. Also, you never want to give out your password really to anyone over the phone or via email, right? You can't guarantee who's on the other end. And to be honest, if IT support is calling you, they have the power to reset your password. So you should really never give your password to anyone. And then just a quick tip on email. If you get a kind of an email that's a little suspicious, you can use your mouse to hover over the email from address and also any links to make sure they go where you think they're supposed to go before you click. That's really good advice. Now that's something that's really difficult to do on a mobile device like a phone. So that's something to keep in mind. If you get kind of a questionable email, you want to wait until you get to a computer to open that up and process that. So this is a really good time to be really aware of your cybersecurity posture, and know that there's a lot of new threats out there with working from home. Your home network. So when you're at work, you're relying on your work network, and it's secured by your IT department. And really, once you move to that home environment, most folks these days are using Wi-Fi in their home. And a lot of times that's provided on a router that your internet service provider provides you. So one thing you want to make sure on that router is that the default administrator password has been changed. You also want to make sure that you're using WPA2 security, because that encrypts data across your wireless network. And you want to create a strong Wi-Fi password. And really, these days, a strong password is greater than 10 characters. It's very difficult to break with the length. So we found that the longer the password is even better than the more complex the password. Speaking of passwords, strong passwords are a great defense against an attack called password spraying. So again, password length is the key. And we're now calling them passphrases rather than passwords, and it doesn't have to have multiple different characters. We thought that was helpful in security, but it really wasn't. So really what we wanted to do is go ahead and use a longer phrase, 10 characters, and really disassociated words, not something that's related to where you work. We just had an engagement where we worked with a university and we did this. They paid us to do what's called a penetration attack. And what we did was we did this password spraying attack using their motto. And we were able to quickly get into a lot of people that were using that keyword. And so you really want to disassociate it from work. A good thing is, like the hawk surf sail. So you combine it with your favorite bird and a couple favorite activities or pastimes. That's much more secure, even than the password that contains special characters that is shorter. And then, as I mentioned, one of our questions about two-factor authentication, that really adds a layer of protection, and it is more than just your password then to gain access to things like your email especially. So if the rule of thumb these days is if there's two-factor authentication available for any business system or any system that you use, you really should employ it. And that goes double for email. This attack, this password spraying attack, very common with email. The other thing that may not be happening since you're not on the corporate network, and that you may not even be using a corporate device, you may be using a home computer. So you're patching updates on your system, the operating system updates, popular software that everybody uses, right? Adobe PDF Reader and web browsers are a good example of that. You may have seen and heard about the Internet of Things, right? So you have smart home and internet connected devices like your thermostat, your doorbell, the baby monitor, even game consoles, right? Those should all be updated. That's a way people can get into your network. And so those are some things that you may not think about at home, but if you're using especially a bring your own device, make sure that you have those updates and you're keeping up with that. And then many systems like Microsoft, right, they have automatic patching settings within the device, and really enabling those makes it much easier to keep up with your updates. And then we all love our family, and I guess in these days we don't have too many guests. We're not supposed to be having guests, I guess, with the kind of shelter in place and social distancing. But your new home office, you may have a lot of your kids around, right? And if you could leave your computer kind of unattended and unlocked, and that may be an accident waiting to happen. Maybe unintentional, right? You're working on a document, you get interrupted by something, and you come back and it's been deleted, right? So you don't have that same saving that's going on your work network likely. And you should make sure your family understands that if you are lucky enough to bring home a computer from the office, that it's work computer, and that they should not be on there, downloading anything or trying to use that computer in any other way, since it is a work device. That can be a problem. So those are just some quick tips for you. And so now we can kind of talk about, why that's important. And I just got an email. We subscribe to a lot of different email feeds about threats, and the Department of Homeland Security issued one just at 8 o'clock this morning. And it really focuses on what we're learning and seeing, that criminal activity, they are really using this COVID-19 virus, right? as of March 25th, there were over 5,000 new domains, right? New websites created with the word COVID or Corona in them. And so typically that is a tip-off. When you see a new domain registered, that's a tip that, hey, it could have malicious intent. And a lot of these are proving to be just that. We've had the report of the, the fake map that shows the virus spread worldwide had malware embedded. They're more and more, they're getting sophisticated with phishing scams, just trying to really get your credentials, get you to enter your credentials or give away personal information. A lot of the phishing scams that we're seeing just recently are related to, government payouts, right? Checks and things like that, which, it's preying, unfortunately, on people. Some people are desperate. They have not worked, they have not gotten paid, and so they're really anxious and clicking on everything without really thinking, where did this come from? And unfortunately, a lot of these phishing look very convincing. I'm looking at one that is circulating in England right now, and it has the gov.uk logo. It looks very official. So you've got to pay attention to that URL, the link, right, the web link, and hover those links to get them to pop up. So that's a lot of what we're seeing. We're also seeing some GoFundMe scams and telephone scams to try to get you to donate money to organizations that really don't exist, and they're just trying to steal your money.
Hey,
so,
Joe, we have
yes.
some questions here. I
Okay.
wanted to get in just a couple of minutes ago. I actually had one for Wi-Fi, going back to the home situation, kind of to circle back around. So does offering guest Wi-Fi at home open us up to security risks for the private channel?
So a little bit of it depends on how you secure that guest Wi-Fi at home. As long as you have a secure and different passcode for folks to get on that guest Wi-Fi, the risk is mitigated by that. But if it's the same passcode and just a different, SSID, that's not enough. It needs to be a completely different, SSID, so it's going to show up differently on your Wi-Fi, and then it has to have its own passcode, and it needs to be complex. It needs to be at least 10 characters.
Mm-hmm. And also, in Office 365, with regards to MFA, what is the difference between enabled versus enforced?
The difference between enabled and enforced. I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not really, that's a question I have not heard before, so I'd have to take that one offline. But I think what you can do in Office 365 when you sign in as a global admin and go to look at and see who has basically completed setting up their multi-factor authentication, that may be where it's enabled. Enforcing it essentially forces everyone, the very next time they connect to Office 365, it enforces them to set that up. I believe that's the difference. And to be quite honest, you are at pretty big risk if you don't have that multi-factor authentication enforced for Office 365, particularly if you don't enforce strong passwords.
Okay.
So it is a big magnet for people trying to break in.
Well, and speaking of passwords, we had another question that asked, which password management services do you recommend? So I'm not sure what they mean by password management necessarily, but
password managers, and that's I'm telling you, hey, they need to be 10 characters long. And I don't know if you've done an inventory about how many passwords you have. I have almost 100, And most people, they have between 70 and 80. Most people in the United States have 70 or 80 passwords to remember. So a horrible practice is I just make the same password for everything. Well, that doesn't work, because if it's involved in a breach, then you've got to change all your passwords or take a risk that people are going to get in. So password managers kind of are your personal reminder, right? You can put your passwords in a password manager, and you actually go to a site, and it will actually, if you're using a web browser especially, it will actually fill that password in for you. So we've used 1Password and LastPass. Those are the two that we've used and have some good experience with. Now, as a managed service provider, AME itself, we have something that's more designed for managed services providers. So it's called Passportal, and so that's kind of the take on password managers. You should definitely look into them. They're not very expensive. A lot of them you can get like a family plan, and your whole family can use, but they're definitely a good idea.
Speaking, and I have 2 more questions, and then we can move on.
No,
everyone was really good about their questions towards the beginning. So question is, should I use public Wi-Fi if an SSL proxy is in place?
So I always get nervous using public Wi-Fi unless I'm using my own VPN. That's the only time I will really use it. And to be quite honest, I more often than not will tether to my phone. If I'm out and about and I need internet, I will connect to my phone and use my cellular to get on the internet. You cannot trust, you go to McDonald's, you go to Starbucks, you cannot trust who's managing that. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that since you don't really know who's managing that, you cannot be certain. You can't even be certain, like in a Starbucks, that you're connecting to their Wi-Fi. There is there's a little thing called a Wi-Fi pineapple. It's a hacking tool. It's as small as a pack of cards, a deck of cards. So I can have that in my backpack. I can say that this is Starbucks 1. And if you connect to that, boom, I can intercept all your traffic. So if you're going to your bank and checking out your account balances, I've just been able to get all that traffic in plain text, because you're really connected to my little Wi-Fi and not the business's Wi-Fi. So if you're not using something that encrypts that data, like a VPN that you control and I don't recommend that.
Okay. And I just wanted to stop for a moment. Somebody said that the presentation had stopped for them. So if anyone's still on the call and hearing everything, if you wouldn't mind typing something quickly in the Q&A just to let me know that it's still live for everyone, we would appreciate that.
Okay, and the last point on the threats, right? I don't mean to scare you, but they're out there, and unfortunately, they're criminals for a reason. They will take advantage of anything, including this situation. So trust reliable resources. The National Governors Association has an excellent site that has every possible link you could want. It has maps. It has whatever each state is doing. It is a reliable, trusted resource on this coronavirus. And then, of course, the cdc.gov, that would be the other place you go. And I linked to the world map because it seems like there was a lot of interest in that. I think people are now more focused on, local, state maps. And again, the nga.org is a great resource. So, if you're curious, you get a link in your social media, I would be very, very skeptical. And I think somebody had asked, can you trust .gov URLs?
Yes.
The answer is yes, but again, you want to pay attention that somebody doesn't do .gov and then another .com or .ru, right? That would be Russia. Even though it says .gov, you don't want to stop there. You want to make sure it just is .gov. So you want to pay attention. Like I said, it's really important to pay attention to the URLs and hover those and see where those really go. Because in an email, guys, I can make it look, the link, I can make it say anything. It's just like a web page. And the code that actually takes you to the site is behind that. So by hovering with your mouse and not clicking, you can see where that's going. So I just caution you. So some working from home threats, more specific to working from home. I think I mentioned RDP, which is really a popular tool to be able to get back into the server at work and get your files. And it can be abused, right? If it's not set up securely, it is really a target. These hackers, what they have programs that will actually go out and scan the internet looking for open RDP sessions that they can go ahead and leverage. So what we like to do is set it up securely. We limit it to specific IP addresses, and then we require a VPN as well. So we require you connect via a VPN, and then you're actually doing RDP to get on that computer that's at work. Wi-Fi security, I believe I mentioned this at home, but you want to have it set to WPA2. That way that Wi-Fi, that wireless session is encrypted. If possible, you really don't want to use your home computer if that's possible. And I know this caught a lot of folks flat-footed as far as moving people home, but if you have a bring your own device, which is something that you own, your personal, instead of the company, a lot of times it's not managed. So it may not, the patching may be in question, the antivirus may not be up to date. And businesses also can secure even whether you're allowed to download things onto that computer. Well, you're not going to have those same protections at home. So it's just something to keep in mind. Again, I know I said this earlier, but this is like I'm going to preach this until everybody does it. But if you have the opportunity to do two-factor authentication, you should definitely use two-factor authentication, because then it's not just a username and password. If somebody happens to trick you out of that, they still can't get in because they don't have that second factor of authentication that you're being required to enter. And a lot of times, since most people have a smartphone, most of those programs work very seamlessly on your phone these days. So it's not as difficult. I'm an old guy, so back in the old days, you used to have to carry around like a little token that the number changed. You had to type that number in. It is much easier today to implement two-factor authentication. And then some of the policies and technical controls that are available on your work network probably aren't in place from home. So as far as where your company data can be saved and stored, remember I mentioned, maybe I'm storing it locally on my computer now, where normally it would have been just auto-saved to the network. And my 3-year-old comes along and happens to hit the delete key while a file is selected just accidentally, and then my last hour of work is gone. And that speaks to your productivity from home, which I think Jennifer's gonna talk about here shortly. So this has been in the news a lot, right? And I'm going to mention it. Zoom, probably a lot of you have been on Zoom meetings, and there has been some problems with Zoom as far as whether your files, if you transfer files, whether those are really encrypted end to end, so from your computer to whoever. The other piece is, just like this webinar, any webinar, you can set it up wrong. You can set it up insecurely, and that is what happened. A lot of people, jumping on the video conferencing bandwagon here, and they don't take time to set it up securely. So you want to require a password for the meeting. You want to have a waiting room where the host can, number one, monitor and then admit attendees, so that you don't get somebody that you don't know joining your meeting, which we've had an example of. And then, when you do screen sharing, you want to make sure that you're sharing the screen you intend to be sharing. Also, be aware of the background in your video conference. Most of the tools now have where you can make your own background, so something embarrassing doesn't come across the screen, like your toddler with no diaper on, and the dog and everything else happening. So I think I've seen all of those online in the last few weeks. And then the file transfer functionality that's built in to video conferencing solutions. Remember, they're video conferencing. So while your video and your audio is secure and encrypted, a lot of times it's just kind of not really designed to securely transfer files, and there's so many other platforms to transfer files that are sensitive, right? If it's just, I'm going to send you this presentation, that's not a big deal. If it's, I'm going to send you this spreadsheet with everybody's social security number, well, that's a lot different. And you wouldn't want to really do that over your video conferencing solution. There's too many other good and secure file transferring programs there, probably one that your company already has in place and you should be using. So that's really, just a little bit on securing these remote meetings. We have had some examples of some failures, right? Working from home. And I know people got kind of pushed into this, but we had a financial advisor's breached when their old IT company exposed remote desktop to the internet. Unfortunately, it is easier to do, especially on older servers. So like on a 2008 server, it's pretty easy to not secure RDP appropriately. So again, that's why I think that it's really good to layer that with a VPN if you can. We had an insurance claims processor decide, back in March, they're going to move 100 users to work from home, and their current laptop inventory was 2. So the timing of this movement to work from home, it did work out a little bit in our favor that China was ramping down, because back in January and even early February, the disruption was real. As far as I tried to get 98 laptops, more than likely those are going to be back ordered for weeks. So it's something to keep in mind that, if this is going to become part of your business moving forward, or your business continuity plan, which we'll talk about, then you should really plan out these purchases, because the devices may not be available. And then some folks just cannot work from home based on the bandwidth needed to work with the types of files they're using. So we had an engineering company that decided to send all of their users home. That includes the drafting engineers. They build water plants. And they use a program called AutoCAD. And anybody that's familiar with large diagrams knows these are huge files. Most of the time, they are hosted on premise at the business, because the bandwidth that's required to manipulate these, pull these up, and save these is just too much for the internet, even if you have a great connection. So that's some of the pieces that maybe you need to think about and consider when you're thinking about working from home as well. And then I mentioned business continuity, and hopefully everybody should have a business continuity plan, right? What happens if the weather gets bad, or what happens if we lose power at the office? And I think we're proving that there's a lot of tools for collaboration that work well beyond this COVID-19, because we are going to get through this, and this will be in the rearview mirror at some point. But Microsoft Teams that we're using today, if you have Office 365, it's part of your subscription. You should leverage that. It is a really, really powerful thing, even to use ongoing. We have folks that are, on normal times, mainly in the office, but we always have a few people that are remote, and we do just a daily kind of huddle in the morning, maybe 10 minutes, where we just get everybody knows what everybody's doing. It's a really good way to get everybody on the same page, and we do that through Teams. And it's just really good collaboration software. Microsoft has really done a great job with it. And if you have Office 365, again, you have it. Microsoft SharePoint, again, another good way to share files and not have them on your computer. Zoom, I mentioned they do have some issues, but I will say this: it has been somewhat overblown in the media. And I know that's probably maybe not a shock to some of you, but
Hey, John, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When comparing Zoom to like a Microsoft Teams, what are there factors that make Microsoft Teams more secure? Why is it that that's a more trusted source, especially for schools? Well,
Zoom is a free solution. It started out as a free solution, right? It takes some configuration, just like your Office 365, right? Not everybody, you don't set up everybody in Office 365 as an administrator, right? So Zoom has the capability to be secure, but a lot of people don't set it up. They don't take the time to do that. And then if it is a transferring of files, it is definitely not recommended because it's not encrypted point to point, whereas Teams is. I think that's the difference in a nutshell. Zoom is very good at what it does, though. As far as a video conference like we're doing, it's ahead in many instances of Teams. As far as doing backgrounds and things like that, and some features that it has. So it's not that it's bad software, but it's just common not to configure it securely. And I think, mobile devices, right? I think, a lot of people, we had one company that they moved about, 30 users home, and they had laptops. None of the laptops had microphones or cameras. So they had to scramble and get some USB microphones and cameras, which were also in short supply, right? Because most of those come from China. And so, if you're going to do that and you're shopping for your new laptops, it's a good idea to make sure you have those pieces built in. Maybe a little more expensive, but again, you can leverage this work from home as part of your business continuity strategy. If the office has a loss of internet, and a lot of your people can, if they had internet, they could work. They don't necessarily depend on data that's on premise. It's in the cloud. You could consider sending them home, and you're prepared to do that. I know in the winter, right, there can be some travel disruption to the office, and that may be a safer alternative for your folks to be able to still be productive and work from home. And then, I think one of the things that's going to come out of this is a lot of people have realized, okay, we can do this from home. We can be effective from home. And, those leases for physical office space come up. Maybe we don't need, 3,000 square feet. Maybe we need half that. So those are some things I think that looking forward is going to come out of the situation that we're currently in. But I think that, the next part of this presentation really are I think Jennifer Arena would say they're common sense to an extent. But I'll be honest, I went through the slides and I was like, well, I didn't think of that. So Jennifer, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, so I have worked from home before, but not every day, every week, every month like it has been now. So there are some challenges. The top four, I think, are lack of community and, your company culture and seeing people and that camaraderie, engagement and communication, accountability and productivity. And I put on here, my neck and back are killing me. So what I have found at home, because we use Microsoft Office 365 with Teams, we video call each other all the time. We have engagement, we have communication, we share, every project I have has a Teams site, and everybody that's engaged there can chat and communicate with each other. We can have all of our files there that we're working on. So in terms of engagement, communication, accountability, and productivity, with Office 365 and how we're set up, I think that's really superior to not having those and just working, in an office. The lack of community, I do miss seeing people in real life. And part of that, with my neck and back are killing me, is I don't get up and move around as much because I video conference where I message. I don't get up and walk into somebody's office to talk to them, and I don't walk around as much. I'm also missing my stand-up table from the office, so I just have a regular desk here at home. The first thing to do is really, establish your rules and your expectations. So as a company, you need to have a remote work policy, and all your employees need to know that. But working from home, you have to have your own home policy of what you expect of yourself, of your family, and just communicate that. And instead of just trying to wing it, you have to make a plan, and that works best for working from home. Also, stay in the professional mindset. It's kind of easy to lose some of your routines. And it's like, oh, since I'm not going into work, I'm going to stay in my pajamas and I'm not going to shower for 3 days. It's best to continue your normal routines. Get up, get dressed, be presentable. I don't wear as formal of clothes as I did in the office, but I always, look okay to turn on the video, because that's an important part of it. The office space is probably a very significant factor in how successful you are, because you really need a dedicated space. During this time, my husband is also working from home. Luckily, I have an office space, and we created an office space in the basement for him. We tried to use the same office for a while, and we just couldn't, because we were both, having calls and doing more remote work. We also had to work on chairs because, that really contributes to the backache and neck ache, and making sure everything's just like you would in your office, at your office building. Taking breaks is very important. What I have found is that I am not taking enough breaks. So there's even apps out there to help you set timers for breaks. I make sure I have I'll show you a little bit later, but I have a thermos full of decaffeinated tea. So I try to drink all day. And I try to go for a walk during the day, because I need to move more. And that's important. If you're having meetings that you don't really have to be working on, you're just listening or maybe talking, try just standing up doing, for that. Also, I laughed, I'm having Alexa in my office. So Alexa, open work break.
Time for a work break. I can suggest an activity, stretch, or snack idea.
So Alexa, stop. You know, so I was hunting around for stuff just kind of for fun. And she continues to babble on. So that one's kind of cute because it's short and sweet. And Alexa, stop. Well, sometimes she doesn't listen to you. I shouldn't have brought in little gadgets to it. Also stick to a plan. So I'm trying to use my calendar also for myself and for communicating with my coworkers. If I have to go do something personal during the day to take care of my family, I put that on the calendar and I try to make it a routine. So it's the same thing every day, and that helps. I love Mark Twain's quote: "If it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first in the morning. And if you have two, eat the biggest one first." That also goes to looking at your best time of day to do the most difficult things when it's best for you. And my big stickler is I like to maintain a work time and a home time. My husband hasn't been he's fallen into that, you know, working all hours of the day, working in the evening, working on the weekends. And it's so easy to fall into that. So I think that's very vital. But here's something that's in Teams where you can set your availability, and you can also type in a status if you're saying, I'm out of the office, I'm out of my home, or maybe I just have to go run and do something, and it's best if I'll have my phone on me, so message me. So using your tools. I think a huge thing is focus. At home, especially during this time when we have all of our family at home, kids out of school, there can be so many distractions. A friend of mine said, I don't like working from home because I'm too distracted. It's like, oh, I could go put in a load of laundry, or I could do this, or I could do that. So you really have to work on not only eliminating distractions, but also improving your focus. Using a timer to focus on tasks. Not looking at your emails constantly, unless that's your job, because that can be a distraction from a task or project you're working on. So kind of say, I'm going to look at them in 2 different times or 3 different times a day. And turning off social media and not multitasking. There are apps out there that you can turn on that blocks everything from your computer to where you can't get lured into Googling this or using social media. There's also, in terms of improving focus, I'm not one to be able to listen to music, but I went and found this website called Cofativity, and it has this background noise of people mingling in the cafeteria, and I turned that on really low, and it kind of just faded into the background. And actually, I found that kind of pleasing. I also have my headset is kind of noise canceling. So if there's more noise in your house, or if other people are doing work, or the kids are being loud, and sometimes that helps to bring some quietness. Prioritizing best time of day, getting up before others, really being organized definitely improves your focus. One thing about multitasking, some people think that they're great at multitasking. There's a lot of parents out there that multitask, but to be everywhere is to be nowhere. And you might look busy, but it actually wastes time and quality goes down. So it's better to plan and organize and try to reduce your multitasking. It's pretty much hard to, or impossible to eliminate, I think, but if you can reduce it. Stay connected. Joe mentioned our daily team huddles. So at the beginning of the day, we have 15 minutes. Sometimes it doesn't even last that long, just to like the state of the company, what's going on, what are, big things happening. Does anybody have anything that they need help with? I also have a daily huddle with a smaller team. And with a smaller team, we go through and kind of review, what are we working on? What's happening today? Where do I need help? So if you're really trying to, if you're worried about your team with productivity and accountability, people can report off every day really quickly what's going on. And that definitely helps to stay effective. We've also noticed that with meetings, people are turning on their video more often, and they're using some social time at the beginning of meetings. And I think that has helped a lot. Using video conferencing, this is an example of one of our legitimate meetings, and our director of service on April Fool's Day, and at the start we had a kickoff of something, and he was just kind of being silly. So it's good. And using video is proven to increase engagement and focus. Office 365 actually has this analysis of how you work that you can look at, and it can say while you're in meetings, you were busy doing a lot of other things. And so if you turn on video, you'll probably notice that coming down. So you're not multitasking during video meetings. With accountability and productivity, it's basically the same thing. What would you do if you were in the office? How would you manage your team if you were in the office? You have clear responsibilities. You use planning tools. You use time tracking. All that can be used and should be used with your remote staff. And it's always good to evaluate yourself. Just every so often, how am I doing? Do I need to do anything differently? I would also encourage you to learn how to use mobile apps. There's great things, of course, and I know obviously we love Microsoft Office. So I have everything on the phone. I have my Teams on the phone. I have SharePoint on the phone. I have our telephone app on my phone. So I get alerts if somebody's posted something or trying to get in touch with me. It's just so easy, and it makes it so much nicer. So I would definitely encourage you to learn how to use the mobile apps. And that is all for me. I know I went over that quite briskly, but I wanted to stay on time, and I'm going to bring Samantha back. And we're going to wrap up. We can have any questions if we have any leftover questions.
Looks like
get them in there so we can answer.
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz, Joe, and Jennifer. I found it very interesting that there were several technology pieces that I got out of it, as well as just some normal how do I get through the day working remotely. So a lot of us are in this same space, so we're trying to figure out what our new normal and adapting is to it. So I'm actually enjoying it. A lot of those tips that Jennifer had given, I've tried to adapt as well. So I am beginning to enjoy this. So hopefully we'll get back to some normal engagement in the near future. I think that we're all kind of craving that as well. But certainly we'll continue some of these best practices that we're continuing to learn. So I want to thank you all for coming or being a part of this webinar, I should say. It is our first one, so we appreciate you being patient with what we were doing. I thought the AME group did a fantastic job of presenting today, so I appreciate that. If you do want to know more about Purdue at Westgate, kind of what we do here and some resources that we have, you can always visit our social media channels, especially LinkedIn, where it's Purdue at Westgate, and the @ symbol is what we utilize, so it's Purdue at Westgate. And also you can visit our website at www.westgate-academy.com. So I'm going to go ahead and give you back to Liz. She is going to be able to provide you with some more resources and tell you some other things that are going to be interesting for you going forward. So again, thank you very much to all the presenters today and for you joining us. Hopefully we'll engage with you again soon. Thank you.
Hi everybody, Liz here, and sorry about background noise. That is my fan on my computer trying to cool everything down. Just wanted to thank you for participating today and remind everybody that we are going to be sending out a post-webinar email and let you know too that speaking of the online breach prevention training, we actually have 30 minutes for free for each participant today. So if you are interested in testing out 30 minutes free breach prevention training, please open up that email that we'll be sending out and follow the link and fill it out. We'll take care of you on that. But we will include this particular slideshow. We'll also have some really great infographics and a really great work from home playbook that also has some excellent tips that you can share within your team to be able to help you further. So feel free to follow AME Group on LinkedIn, and we post a lot of great tips and tricks often, and make sure that you're sharing those with people within your office. So with that being said, thank you so much for participating, and we really look forward to you joining us next time.